All right, y'all. I just got these shadows in the mail yesterday, and now we have got to talk about the new Looxi Salti Cloudz collection. So let's go ahead and get right into it. If you don't know, Looxi Beauty is probably my favorite eyeshadow brand. I love their $3 price point, and I think that they have some really, truly beautiful shades. But recently, I feel like something is going on behind the scenes over at Looxi. Of course, this is just speculation, so take that with a grain of salt. But I've had some people commenting on my older videos that I've done on Looxi saying that when their shadows arrived, they didn't look like the ones that I swatched. And it seems like their last few collections have had a different formula than some of my favorite shades that they've done in the past. I also noticed that they've cleared a lot of the shades off the website, and I don't know. I just feel like something's going on, and honestly, I'm not loving it. To kind of illustrate my point, I want to go through and swatch the shadows from the new collection that I decided to pick up and compare it to some other Looxi shadows that I have that are similar color stories but very different in the finish. First up, we've got Stormi, and this is probably one of my favorites from this new set, but I'm not sure if you can see. Do you see how it's like a little powdery? In the past, Looxi shades I have found tend to lean on like the silicone-y, slippy kind of side. These still have some sort of like slippiness to them, but then they are also subsequently powdery, which is really confusing to me. You really kind of have to work it in to get it to be even and break down those little powdery bits. This one you can see is like kind of a taupey, like pinkish kind of color with a silver sheen on top. None of these are sparkly. So this one I think has like one of the best and most apparent sheens, but I want to compare it to the shade Snickerdoodle, which is one of my favorites from the brand. And I thought that this would be more similar. Snickerdoodle ends up looking a little bit warmer in the base and greener, like slash bluer in the sparkles on top. But I'm not sure if you can see like the difference in texture that I'm talking about. So this one is like just more sparkly overall, more of like that PC kind of sparkle, whereas this looks kind of like a traditional metallic that you would see from like a mainstream brand's palette. Next up, we have the shade Royalti, and I find that this one has like the most of those little kind of pieces. I'm not sure if you can see them. They're really small and you can blend them in, but it just is a little bit powdery, but also still somehow like sheer. It reminds me of the really old Looxi formula, like a couple of years ago when they had just kind of started doing this sparkly formula. A lot of their shadows were in this type of formula, and it's one that I don't love as much. In comparison, I want to swatch this against Once Upon a Time. This is a Looxi shadow that came out with like the Fairy Tale collection. Oh God, I don't know when that was, a couple of years ago. And you can just see, like, in essence, they're the same kind of thing, but this is a special $3 shadow. This feels like it's a $3 shadow, if that makes sense. I also want to note, like, a lot of the Looxi shadows kind of have a multi-chrome effect to them. Like this one, the blue then shifts to pink depending on the lighting. Whereas all of the new shades do not have like that multi-chrome kind of shift within them. They are what they are when you're looking at them face on. They don't have any additional shifts. Next, we've got Minti. This one is exactly what the name, describes. It's just like a very, very light mint green with kind of like a silvery shift to it or like sheen to it. And I wanted to compare this to, what is this one called? This is mint something. Peppermint Kiss. Peppermint Kiss. This one, again, a couple of years old at this point, and I just feel like it's so much more special as a $3 shade. It's still got that minty green base, but then it's got this pink to like blue and gold sparkle, and it is gorgeous. This one is okay. Out of all of them, it's probably one of the ones I like the most. but it's just not special. This one is probably like the most triggering shade to me. This one is called Nudi, and it does look nice. You know, it's got kind of a rosy, like rose gold kind of base to it with like a golden green sheen on top. But if you've been here before and watched any of my other Looxi videos, they do this type of shade all the time. It comes out in like literally every collection. This one's probably the most different from like other collections, but it's so similar. Like look at these and tell me like that these are different. The base color is a little different. This one's a little bit cooler with this new collection. And this is the shade, I should say, Hunky Dory. But they keep coming out with the shade, and this drives me insane. And again, just to compare the sparkle difference, this is the famous shade Angel Wings, one of the probably most popular from Looxi. And just look at the difference in texture. They're not comparable. Next up, we've got the shade Peachy, and we're gonna compare this to Champagne Punch. Champagne Punch was a limited edition shade, but it is very similar to Reserve number 2 from Shine by SD or Meteorite from Terra Moons. And I mean, again, just look at the difference. Like, they're both nice, you know. This one on its own, like, if this was your first Looxi shadow, you might be impressed with this, you know. But compared to what I've seen them do in the past, it's just not even a competition. This next shade is Hunni, and this one is nice. It's a nice neutral. It's got a little bit more of a base color to it. It's a little bit deeper. A lot of these other ones have been pretty pastel. And it's just kind of like a true copper kind of shade. And I want to compare this to two. First, I want to compare this to Scarecrow. I think that this was from maybe the fall 2021 collection or 2022 maybe. And it's deeper. It, you know, has that same kind of like peachy, coppery type of color on top. But then I also wanted to compare it to Burnt Toast. And Burnt Toast is an older shade I have. And when I got it, it was like one that I was the most disappointed with formula-wise. And it seems to be the formula that Looxi is going in, because formula-wise, it's pretty dang comparable to this new shade Hunni. The shade Scarecrow has like a little bit of a deeper, warmer base and a little bit more golden on top. I would say Hunni sits right in between these other two. The last shade that I picked up is Hotti, and this one is definitely the nicest out of all of the ones I picked up. It's got like the most kind of oomph to it. But even still, it's just not comparable to old shades. Color-wise, I find that this is actually pretty unique. It's kind of got like a berry base with a really strong golden sparkle on top. And I thought the closest thing I could compare it to is Caterpillar, although they're not the same at all. But I just think you can see that the sparkle in Caterpillar is just a little bit more complex. There's like a little bit of like shiftiness happening within it. I gotta say though, out of all of them, this one is the best. Like, this is the only one I would really recommend out of all of them. And just to compare, let me show you like the sparkle amount compared to Hunni and Hotti, just so that way you can see what I'm talking about, like about just the sparkle type, if that makes sense. Like I said at the beginning of the video, Looxi has been like my favorite indie brand for a long time. It was the first indie eyeshadow brand that I ever tried. I love their affordability as a price point. And there are honestly a lot of things that like I don't love about the brand that I have overlooked because of their price point. I just have had such a good experience like with the shadows themselves that the customer service side and like the bad communications side and all of that didn't bother me quite as much. But these shadows are just not as good. And I just feel like it's getting harder and harder to justify all of those cons of Looxi when the quality fluctuates so much. And if this is an overall formula change that they are doing, I really wish that they would say that somewhere, because it just isn't what I fell in love with and what I expect from them. Last year, as an experiment with one of my orders, I picked up two shades that I had almost fully panned. and compared them, like the new version that I picked up versus the old version. And I found that they were very, very similar, if not the exact same, with the exception of like time passage between the old version and the new version. And that was about a year ago. So if they have done a formula change, it must have been fairly recently. Again, don't know if it's the case across the board since I only picked up the new shadows. But if you have purchased recently, let us know down below. Do you feel like the texture that you're getting is closer to this, or is it closer to this? Like this sheer kind of super piecey, sparkly, shifty kind of shade. Let me know which type of shade you've gotten if you've ordered recently. One more time, I'll run through the shade names just in case there's anyone that's curious. So starting off, we've got Stormi, then Royalti, Minti, then we've got Nudi, Peachi, Hunni, and Hotti. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you noticing some changes in the Looxi formula? What do you think about Looxi overall as a brand? Whatever your thoughts are, leave them down below. Let me know if you're planning on picking up any of these shades. If I'm being completely honest, I feel like this is a collection you can pretty easily skip, but that's just me. Let me know all of your thoughts down below, and until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!